Everyone's ready. Good afternoon and welcome to the Audit and Governance Committee meeting of the 1st of April 2025. Housekeeping first of all, can I bring to your attention there is no fire alarm expected today, so if it does sound, please follow the signs to the nearest fire exit and meet at the fire assembly point in the Civic Square. Please can I ask that you use your microphone when addressing the meeting and that it's switched off when you're not using it. Your mobile devices are turned to silent, and also that this meeting is broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of subsequent repeated viewing. By entering this meeting room and during the course of the meeting, councillors are consenting to being filmed and to the use of these recordings for webcasting. So just checking, Rosie, I believe there's no apologies today. Okay, what I'd like to do first of all is welcome our new Section 151 officer. This is Ian Tris-Groves. Welcome to your first Audit and Governance meeting. Now move on to item number 2 on the agenda, which is declarations of interest. Do members have any declarations in respect of today's agenda items? No, excellent. Item 3, minutes of the last meeting, which was held on the 11th of March 25. Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you very much, Chair. Well, in relation to minute 4, we didn't just resolve to note the revised Civic Protocol Handbook, because when you look at the tracking decisions, basically the decision of the committee is in the tracking decision, which was to go back to the chair of the Lord Mayor Selection Committee. So that minute's not right. And I would expect it to record the fact that we resolved to, now I don't want it necessarily all spelt out, but resolved to make a number of changes to the handbook, and those would be brought back to the Audit and Governance Committee in due course, following consultation with the chair of the Lord Mayor Selection Committee. So the minute's inaccurate.
Okay. Do you have a suggested amendment that you want to share during this meeting and that we could approve later on?
Yeah, I'll write something up and we can discuss at the end by all means, yeah.
Fantastic, thank you. Any more comments about the minutes of the last meeting? So the committee happy to approve them with the exception already mentioned? Brilliant, thank you very much. No other items of Chair's urgent business. Item number 5 is the audit progress report and sector update. I'm going to go online to David Johnson from Grant Thornton to present this report. Over to you, David.
Thank you, Chair. So members should be, although I'm aware there are new members here, but people should be aware that when we're in a sort of in-between audits process, which I know recently hasn't felt that way, given that we seem to be continually auditing financial statements, but we like to bring audit progress reports and sector updates just to give members an understanding of where we are in the process and also to provide some further resources for them to consider as well. So going through this, I don't propose to spend too long on this because there isn't anything of any particular import within here. I suppose page 10 of the pack, just to confirm that the audit team that was in place last year is the same this year. So you'll have the same partner, manager and assistant manager doing the work. So there is a continuity of knowledge within there. As you'll see here, as at March 2025, we've started some of our planning. We've started our planning on the 24-25 statements. The opinion was obviously disclaimed in 23-24. And we continue to work to try and move ourselves away from there. But you'll see some of the work that we've been doing, and it also includes a consideration of the value for money arrangements as well, and at a planning stage. Page 13 of the pack shows the deliverables. You will note the first one is the audit plan is to be issued in April 2025. It is just a quirk of the timings. We're required to issue our audit plan, before the 30th of April. But obviously there is then not an Audit and Governance Committee meeting until June 2025. So we will discuss the plan with management and then bring that to the Audit and Governance Committee in June. We're then aiming this year to complete all our work and report to you by December to put ourselves back on an even keel after the upheaval within the market over the past couple of years. And also recognising that as of 25-26, the backstop date for local government moves to December. So we're in effect treating this a little bit as a dry run and ironing out any wrinkles that might occur. Page 14 just has some further information on certification and the expectation of when that work will be completed. And then pages 16 onwards is just, as I said, some further resources for members to consider and areas that we think they may be relatively interested in. That was as far as I was going to go, Chair, but quite happy to take any questions.
Thank you, David. So I'll throw this open for questions. Councillor Finn.
Hi, David. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. What's the situation with regard to the SEND deficits when the statutory overrides for March 2026? What are the figures and how is it going to be accounted on the council balance sheet? Point one. When we talk about resources, obviously we've not been furnished with a letter from government or the SIPRA report to date. Is that likely to be published so we can review that report in due course?
I have to apologise, Councillor. Off the top of my head, I don't know the answer to either of those questions, but I'm quite happy to take those away and do further consideration and come back with a written response if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you for your response, David.
No problem.
Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Joe. It's not a question, and thank you, David, for the report. What I wanted to just highlight in relation to the ongoing debate about local government reorganisation is the exceptional financial support for local government that's referred to in the report. And I'll raise it because I think the public at large need to appreciate that many aspects of local government throughout the country are struggling financially, and therefore that probably, and I'm not here to justify the government's actions, but that probably is in some part why local government reorganisation is currently being brought to the fore. So if we just note, apologies, I haven't got my bifocal glasses on today, left them at home. But in February 23, there were 8 councils nationally that needed financial support from the government. In February 24, 19, but in February 25, we're looking at 30. So it's just to emphasise the point, Chair, that generally local government continues to be very heavily under scrutiny for the lack of resource, and I would suggest that the City Council would like itself to have more resource to deliver local government services in Plymouth, but we're struggling obviously to maintain expenditure within current budgetary levels. So just for the public at large, they need to appreciate that councils can't deliver everything the public would like, so managing expectations is key. But there are obviously many councils, now 30, who are in a very bad situation, and that can only probably get worse as we move forward. So it's just to make that point, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Mrs. Benny.
Thank you. It was just, it's really probably a question for the officers. Just at page 21, the Financial Resilience Index, do we use that routinely, and where does that feature in terms of reporting?
Yeah, we do use it's a publicly available index that we would use. I think it would feature, and David will correct me if I'm wrong, in Grant Thornton's assessment of value for money. They would probably look at things like the SIPFA's Financial Resilience Index, and we would therefore get recommendations through from external audit. And also, as Section 151, Ian will in due course look at that when we're considering the Section 25 reports at the end of the financial year when we set the budget, looking at things like, you know, the robustness of the budget, the adequacy of reserves, and the Financial Resilience Index being a benchmarking tool is quite a useful sort of set of assurance for that analysis as well.
Thank you. Councillor Finn, you've just indicated.
Just to follow on what Mrs. Benny said, regard to resources, is there any chance that we could be furnished with a copy of the SIPRA report, please? It's been referred to over the last 12 months. And also a copy of the letter with regard to the outcomes to the pension transaction for the benefit of the committee, so we can review it, please.
Chair, as incoming, actually, I had opportunity to review the SIPRA letters. It's publicly available. We can obviously provide a copy of that for you. It's a public document that's out. That well, certainly we can arrange for that. As for I'm just obviously coming on board and handing over from David. I need to get myself up to speed in terms of letters. I know there's ongoing communication still, but I will certainly undertake to understand the situation and what is available. I would share in accordance as has been agreed previously in previous meetings, I understand.
No, thank you very much for that. It was just that we agreed as a committee some time ago that as soon as the letter was published, members would be informed, and they weren't. And as soon as the SIPRA report was published, the members would be informed straight away, and they weren't. So we can't review what we haven't got. So thank you very much for that response. Thank you.
Any further questions on the audit progress report and sector update? Okay. Thank you, David. We'll now move on to item 6. This is the anti-fraud, bribery and corruption policy. And here I'm heading over to Tony Rose from Devon Audit Partnership and Peter Burgoyne, also from Devon Audit Partnership. Over to you guys.
Thank you very much, Chair. If I may start briefly by making a quick note, is hanging up his counter-fraud size 12 boots is probably the phrase he'd use as of the end of this month to go off and enjoy his life in different ways. So he's been a great asset to Plymouth, to the Audit Partnership and really to the South West in the fight against fraud over quite a few years now. So I just wanted to formally say thank you to him for that. And for those of you that know him, sadly, you probably won't get a chance to see him unless you happen to bump into him for a pint or a coffee somewhere. But no, he will be missed. And then on to the policy here, which Ken himself back in 2018 helped rewrite. In essence, the core of the policy remains the same. The principles behind it remain the same around making sure that we're taking proactive action where we can and investigating fraudulent activity. The key things to draw attention to are on page 38, paragraph 3.2. We've added the Economic Crime and Corporate Transparency Act. This is a new government act which comes into effect from the 1st of September 2025, and it applies to, in essence, all organisations. It will apply to Plymouth City Council. The reasoning being, as a headline, you have to have more than 250 employees, turnover of over 36 million and various levels of assets. But the good news, if you like, is all of the work that's underway. There are certain things that need to be done to ensure that you're compliant with that in respect of fighting fraud. That includes top-level commitment, risk assessments, proportional and risk-based procedures. The work that's gone on to date ensures that Plymouth are, in my opinion and in Ken's previously, compliant with that. So the level of risk for any kind of activity happening in a fraudulent sense and then a prosecution under this act of the council or officers is probably low because of the activity there. But it is important to note that this is now part of that landscape, or will be as of the 1st of September. So that's paragraph 3.2. So we've added in a note around that and happy to provide more information as time goes on. And the second one is an update to paragraph 6.2, and just that we've got some slightly different addresses and email addresses to update. Other than that, the remainder of the document, essentially barring some figures updated for the level of fraud, remains the same, and the commitment and the responsibilities remain the same as they have been previously. Thank you, Chair.
I can see Mrs. Benny's already indicating with a question.
Sorry, it was just a quick one. It was literally just above the highlight in yellow on page 3 of 7. There's the highlight in blue, and I wondered if that had changed at all.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Benny. It has not. If I'm honest, I'm not sure quite why it's highlighted in blue. Maybe someone got a little bit carried away and didn't like yellow for some reason. But yeah, the council still has elected members and employees, so I think that situation stays the same. But it's a good spot.
Councillor Cudahy?
Just in relation to the policy, can I take you to paragraph 7.5 of the policy? That's page 41 of the pack. I think it's page 7 of the policy. 7.5 is just in relation to every member of staff and elected member of the council being responsible for acting with propriety, being alert to the possibility of fraud, reporting details immediately through appropriate channels. The fourth bullet point there refers to the code of conduct. And I had a look at the code of conduct, and you know, lots of the language in respect of this stuff is all about, you know, acting with propriety, being reasonable, all that kind of thing. And I noticed in the code of conduct there's a policy in relation to gifts. For staff members of the council to get gifts, it says employees should not accept significant personal gifts from contractors or outside suppliers. I mean, seems a statement of the obvious. The director may allow, head of service or strategic director may allow employees to keep insignificant items of token value, such as pens and diaries. In all circumstances, however, the appropriate head of service or strategic director should be advised of the gift, and a record of it should be taken in the register already referred to. I can imagine that leads to quite a bit of work, and I wonder whether it's necessary. What's your view on that?
If I may, I think the principles you've alluded to, I think, are the important bit of that. The reality of the situation is that there is a gifts and hospitality register. Louise Clapton, one of the team, does work on that periodically to check it's up to date. So I think the concept of myself went to a conference on counter fraud, picked up 2 pens. I'm afraid, if I'm honest, I can put my hands up and say I haven't notified someone of those.
You have my support.
But I suspect in the scheme of things, the principle is to make people think about the fact that they need to. So there is a proportionality element to it. I think the idea is that you know, the aim is to take a strong approach to it, but reality comes into play then around reporting certain things. Ultimately, I would suggest that it's probably a conversation amongst officers at the council to wonder if they want to revise the wording. And I suspect maybe they are. I haven't read the policy in the last week at least. I don't know whether that's examples or specific. So it might be a case of better examples given as to what should be reported. But if I'm honest, I don't think people get much more than the odd pen or notepad anyway.
Well, I mean, I can imagine, you know, the bin men might get something at Christmas from some residents who are happy with them. You know, I just want to say Merry Christmas, or say a social worker's done a good job and someone wants to send a bunch of flowers. You know, you can imagine in sort of really, really difficult family circumstances, there might be quite a good rapport between a social worker and, let's say, somebody who's end of life and needs some care. So it's really that, and I think you get it. My point is the proportionality of it. When you say it's for officers to have a conversation, is there anything that you think that this committee might helpfully say, if it's prepared to officers about this?
I suspect you may have already done so, indirectly, in the sense of raising it, if you like. Okay. So for those it might be that those in the room take that back and say, actually, on the next review of the code of conduct, is there some revised wording? I suspect you may not need to go as far as making a formal recommendation on it, though. But I don't know whether officers want to comment on that.
Some nods.
I think noted, and I think that to Tony Rose's point, introducing de minimis limits can bring back some judgment on people, which could cause difficulty. But I think it's a valid point, and to your kind of your examples you gave, I think it's one that we should take away and have a think about. And how do you word that in an appropriate way that ensures you maintain the integrity of the policy, but give some room there. But that needs some thought and consideration as I come into this. The lack of context from previous discussions.
Yeah.
May I, Chair? Just through you, Chair. There is a £25. There is an employee declaration policy, and it is a £25 threshold, and it's not as burdensome as it sounds. We have through Firm Step, you just fill in a form to say what you've had. It's sent through to the director to just acknowledge and approve, and that's it, done. So it's not the huge burden that it perhaps sounds.
Liz, I'm trying to open up the code of conduct on my.
Okay, I don't recall seeing the figure.
Yeah, and I could hear Councillor Rains saying, "No, it's not in the code of conduct." I don't remember seeing it in there either.
There is an employee declaration policy which is available to staff on the intranet.
Should that be in there though?
So whether the wrong link is perhaps in the report is something for us to have a look at.
We've got Councillor Rainsford and Councillor Steve.
I was just going to reiterate the need for proportionality here and ask whether or not there was a financial limit, because at Westminster, there was a set figure over which you couldn't go, and if you didn't know, you actually had to ask the person who was donating if they had any idea how much they'd spent. And, you know, it's right that happens, but it can be difficult. And £25, £30 seems reasonable.
Councillor Stevens?
Yeah, I think we all know, we're all on the same page, and I don't think there's any disagreement, certainly that I'm sensing. I just think that if people are looking at this issue, and as my colleagues to my right have done, looked at the code of conduct, and there's no mention in there of the £25, and I just think we should err on the side of bombarding people with information as opposed to making it really difficult to find. I mean, the ideal position is obviously going to be somewhere in the middle, and I'm sure it's not beyond our collective capabilities to get there. But I think if people are having to ask the question in this sort of committee, then perhaps we need to join the dots a little bit more.
Councillor Nicholson?
Certainly from experience, to put it in context, we have at certain times of the year had sort of, so when there's summer concert on the Hoe, where members potentially were able to benefit from a city council organised event by having a complimentary ticket, a form had been sent out for members to declare that gift. So I think periodically over the years that has happened. Would it not be potentially enshrined in a different policy document of the council, maybe? And that's why it's not showing up in the document that is being referred to here. And I know from my own company, on a very regular basis, once or twice a year, there is normally a notification. So it might be again something that ought to periodically be sent not only to staff but to members, just to refresh our memory and mind of the policy. Thanks.
Councillor Cudahy?
Yeah, just in response to Councillor Nicholson, the point about concert tickets is raised in the officers' code of conduct. I'm just trying to find the relevant passage. Here we are. Where are you? Yeah, here we are. Yeah, attendance at paid for events should be authorised and recorded. So I think that's covered. But yeah, but just to confirm what Councillor Stevens was saying and Councillor Rainsford, paragraph 19.8 of the Officers' Code doesn't refer to a figure for gifts. And I just make the point. I mean, personally, I would question why £25 is the upper limit of gifts, but whether it could just be a bit more specific, it sort of does cause me a bit of concern that there's a detailed register that someone is being paid to keep up to date. One imagines, heads of service and what have you, having to look at these kinds of things kind of on a regular basis. I mean, by all means, put me right if that's not actually happening, but that's the kind of, that seems to be the direction that the code of conduct is pointing to.
As to whether heads of service review it on a regular basis, I don't suspect that happens, as long as you've registered it on the register and the director has had it, seen it, ticked it, it's recorded for purposes to refer back to at some point. The code of conduct is an overarching document as to how employees are expected to behave generally. Then sits under that are individual policies, one of which is the hospitality and gift policy, so it's a separate policy. Take your point, if we want, we could potentially put the £25 limit in there. But it is in the gifts policy, which officers should be aware of themselves. And it's I found it within 2 seconds on the intranet, so it's not difficult to find. Happy to review the code of conduct though and take that back.
Does committee have any further questions on the anti-bribery and corruption policy? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to item number 7, which, beg your pardon, we have a recommendation which is to note and agree the changes to the anti-bribery and corruption policy, but with the notes that the gifts are going to be taken away and looked at. Is committee happy to note and agree the changes? Thank you. Item number 7, I'm going to bring John Finch, our Information Governance Manager now, to introduce the report on this. Thank you, John.
Good afternoon, and apologies, Ruth Harrell was due to present this, but I've been asked to stand in Ruth's absence. So this is a strategy document, so a very high level document, but it does have a lot of detail because it's quite wide reaching, covers all the aspects you'd need to see in a data quality strategy. And we shouldn't underestimate the value of data, but it's really, really important that we have real high quality data and accurate data. And this document strives to address that. It replaces a previous data quality document with a lot more detail, and will put the council in a very good position to address the prevent agenda, which we're now looking at, because that's going to be wholly reliant on having accurate data to be able to redirect our resources to the key areas that are needed. Yeah, so the strategy emphasises the importance of quality, who's actually responsible, and it will be the responsibility of every single employee to ensure that the strategy is adhered to. But there are some specific high-level roles that have additional responsibilities for that, and various teams which are all detailed. And then it also covers the governance and accountability, various systems and skills needed. Because at the end of the day, we are aiming for a single source of the truth. Not something we have at the moment. And take, for example, some analysis I recently did on FOI requests. There were various iterations of people's names recorded in the request, which made the analysis a lot more difficult. By improving the quality and going for a single source of the truth, we can not only have accurate data, be able to analyse that a lot more efficiently and more cost effectively. So this strategy, going through the approval process now, of which audit committee is one of them, and once agreed, it will be communicated to all staff, and there'll be extra work around processes and various things we need to do to be able to ensure that not only is it adopted, but continually managed and adhered to. And one of the things that we are doing from next week, we've got a member of staff coming in to assess all of the data we've got across the council, and that's quite a large task. And they're going to be identifying exactly what the data we hold is, where it is, who's got responsibility for it, and various other pieces of information. And that will help us to identify which areas we need to improve the quality of data on, and where we might need to target some additional help. So that's a quick overview of the document. Happy to answer any questions. I might not be able to answer every single question. I might have to defer to Ruth when she's back, but happy to take any I can answer.
Excellent, thank you, John. Councillor Rainsford.
Thank you, Chair. The first one is me being slightly concerned about language used. In paragraph 1.1 definitions, information, the second bullet point, says it results from processing, manipulating and organising data. Now, if I were a member of the public or somebody without perhaps data language knowledge, reading that we are manipulating data is not doesn't leave me feeling very comfortable about what the council might be doing with the information they've got. And I just wondered whether there was any way of potentially rewording that. I mean, I think I know what is intended, but I just think it could be misinterpreted.
Very good point, Councillor. It is a word that is open to interpretation, and the negative, it's got a bit of a negative tone. So I think we can look at that word and replace it with a more positive word that just clarifies that we're not changing it for our benefits. We're actually just making it more accurate.
Mrs. Benny.
Thank you. I've got three questions, if I may, and it's in relation to two of them are in relation to 5.3. I'm just scrolling down. So on page 7 of the pack, nope, further down again, sorry. Data validation and authorization. I'm now looking. Yes, so we talk about evidence trail and validation and discourage the use of estimated data. And I suppose the bit for me, there was that one, and then quality objectives. It talks about whenever possible. And it just feels to me that there's a series of like almost opportunities not to do what may be difficult because it may be hard to get hold of. So discouraging the use of estimated data. If it's estimated, then it's not really the truth, one would suggest, and therefore should we not be saying that we shouldn't use the estimated data as a default? And I don't know what context this is would be used for, and again, wherever possible, whenever possible, use specific quality objectives. Well, surely we should or we shouldn't. And it just feels there's room there not to take this on a big leap, if it's a bit difficult. And then my final question was around systems. So there's a big ambition here around that data quality strategy. Have we got the systems the systems available to enable it to become accurate and high quality? It being the data that's there, and I'm assuming it exists across a number of different systems. Sorry, that's a lot.
It's okay. So I'm going to address one of the points. Ross Jago is going to address some of the others. So you said about the use of estimated data. There is some value in some estimated data. For example, in forward trending with, for example, we report a lot of KPIs on a monthly basis, and it can be useful to project that trend towards the end of the year, just trying to identify whether there'd be a greater impact on the council, either positive or negative. And we can only rely on estimated data from those perspectives. But it's estimated in a logical way with a lot of thought behind it. Ross, I don't know if you want to come in on this as well.
Thanks, John, through you, Chair. Yeah, I think there's a few things here about language, isn't there, really? So certainly in terms of manipulating, that's very much about how we transform data for use in systems. So certainly a word we could use. Estimated data, well, certainly in terms of some of the forecasting work that we're starting to do, which is based in real life data, but of course, is an estimation, and there are absolutely limits to those estimations. I think again, language. If we were using forecasting instead of estimation, that might be quite helpful. And wherever possible, I think that's really in respect of those third-party external contracts, some of which we probably won't need huge amounts of data from. So perhaps where appropriate, might be a better use of language.
Thank you. And does that address all of the questions?
The other one was around the systems.
Oh, systems.
So
yeah.
presumably we collect data through all sorts of different systems, and have those systems got the capability to land us, and deliver this strategy? I know it's very reliant on humans as well, but I don't know whether there are issues around systems or whether it's all neatly tied together. I wish.
So I think it's fair to, through you, Chair, I think it's fair to say we've got some very robust systems in place for managing data across our departments. I think it's also fair to say that they're somewhat isolated from each other sometimes. So the capability we'll need to develop is how we join those data repositories essentially to derive the best intelligence from them. And of course, what we've highlighted in this strategy is that data can take very many forms, which doesn't necessarily just mean numbers within a social care system, for example, but might also include pictures, videos sent to us through WhatsApp or social media or whatever it might be. I guess there is probably some way to go to properly leverage all of that soft data that we might have coming in from external parties. But again, that's something that will be developed as this programme goes forward.
And in addition with the systems, we in our IT strategy, we are looking at rationalising the IT systems that we have, as we've got far too many, and there is a cost to running each one. So we are looking at how can we rationalise some of our systems, and as part of that process, we'll make sure they are fit for purpose and have simple things like data validation in place and can enforce the quality in some cases. Some of the legacy systems we've used in the past didn't have that functionality, and that caused us some problems. For example, when moving from CareFirst to Eclipse, there was a lot of work required just to get the data at sufficient quality to move into Eclipse. So that is another programme that we are looking at this financial year.
I've got Councillor Rainsford and also Councillor Finn indicating.
Thank you, Chair. If I could come back on the data we hold and how we update that data and ensure that, particularly where people's information is involved. So, for example, housing waiting lists. A couple of decades ago, housing waiting lists were enormous. Councils were asked to go through and have a look and see whether the people on their list were still alive, living, haven't moved. And thousands of people came off those lists and actually released money within the council for them to better target. Do we have, therefore, sort of standard expectations of the departments within the council that sort of cleaning those lists will happen at certain and regular times to ensure that the data we've got is as up to date as it conceivably be?
Yes, and that will be part of the implementation process of this strategy. It's important that, as I mentioned when I talked about it, not only we implement it once, but we have a management process to ensure that there are regular reviews of the data, because it's all right getting a snapshot in time where it was accurate once, but it can get very quickly into an inaccurate space if we don't have those regular reviews. So it is really key we do that.
Thank you. Councillor Finn.
Yeah, hi, Jan. Thanks for that.
Hi.
I've got just a couple of questions. Regarding GDPR, has it proved problematic in data collection? How are you separating, question 2, is qualitative and quantitative data? Is there a separation between the two data streams? And what is being done to prevent bias being induced into the data streams?
I mean,
You can get back to us afterwards if you want.
I think, yeah, that's something we need to take back to the board that's covering data. I mean, it's very good questions. I mean, bias that's quite a tricky question. It's something that we do need to address. So I will take that back to the board, which is a meeting next week.
Through you, Chair. I mean, it's a very good, simple question, which is probably going to result in a very, very long and complex answer, given the wide range of points at which we collect data, how we use it, what systems it's used for, what retention schedules are in place, who can see it and when, and so on. So those are simple questions with very, very complex answers. And more than happy to take Councillor Finn through the various machinations we have to conduct, certainly in respect of some of our corporate reporting, when he's available to do so.
I'm quite happy that John provides the information as and when, please. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Cudahy.
Yeah, a less abstract question, I hope, which is just following on from Councillor Rainsford's example of, lists, council housing waiting lists. what are the objectives behind this data strategy? What actually are you, for example, as Director of Health, hoping to achieve, hoping to get from this data? Right. Sorry, I'm told you're standing in for the Director of Health. I just had a look at the opening of the document. It refers to the Director of Health. But look, pretend that you are.
So what we're hoping to get is actually accurate information that help us direct resources to improve people's health across the city where needed. If that data is inaccurate, we could be targeting the wrong people, the wrong areas, and take with for example, the housing list. If that's inaccurate, lots of mistakes could be made. For example, writing to a deceased person, informing them that a house is ready. That's the distress we don't want to cause people. Likewise, it could have stopped other people further down the list from gaining a house. So there's a lot of key things that are really important about having accurate data. And with health, you want to ensure the data is as accurate as possible, because any decision made on that data could have a negative impact on someone's health. And so we need to make sure it's accurate. Take, for example, in some areas we'll give people medications. You need to make sure you're giving the right person the right medications, because the consequences could be severe.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any further questions for John on the data quality strategy? Okay, so thank you for that, John, and also for Ross. We have a recommendation which is for the committee to receive this strategy and assurance that work is progressing to improve the quality of data across the council in line with the strategy. Is committee happy with that? Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. So item number 8, this is the committee assessment review. And Ross, I believe you're presenting this.
Thanks, Chair. Just to provide you an update really of where we've got to so far in the committee self-assessment. As you'll be aware, this is part of our overall approach to improvement for the committee. Will influence the annual report that the Chair will need to take to Council at some point in the new municipal year for this year. And of course influence the training and development that we provide for members of the committee. So I think we circulated some time ago. It's been a couple of reminders since. I think the questionnaire has identified a couple of areas for minor improvement around making sure that council leadership understands the role of the Audit and Governance Committee, including an improved issue escalation process. There was a note regarding our risk management approach and refining that. Also, that our agendas really need to be focused on our core functions. One respondent suggested that there may be some minor improvements required there. The CIPFA guidance does suggest that the committee meets privately with auditors. We've not done that. It might be something for the committee to consider in the future. I think that's it, Chair. All I really need to update. Now, what I would say is, of course, this doesn't require sign off anywhere, or it doesn't need anything to, that does not need to go anywhere else other than your annual report. So if there is members that have not yet responded, we'll get the questionnaire circulated again to ensure that you have the opportunity.
Thank you. Councillor Rainsford.
Just a small point of clarification, please. Part 2, evaluating the effectiveness of the audit committee, assessment based on a scale of 0 to 4. If you go to page 18, we seem to have got a 5. Which I'm sure we're doing a superb job.
That's excellent data.
Yeah, I think.
But there's a 5 there, and I'm not sure that's correct.
No, that's not quite right. I think they've all moved up 1 because of that negative number, but we'll make sure corrections are made.
Very funny.
But like I said, Chair, this will, happy to receive more contributions, and will certainly form part of the annual report going forward. Thanks, Chair.
Yes, it is April the 1st, although it is after noon, I should note. So yeah, this is just so that the committee notes the findings of the self-assessment exercise, and well spotted, Councillor Rainsford, and that we are happy to confirm that full compliance has been recognised in relation to each of the subject areas. So if all happy with that, yeah. Councillor Stevens?
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, no issue. And just going back on Ross's sort of comments about it doesn't need to be signed off, etc. I think this should be almost like a live, ongoing process. It's pointless saying, yeah, we've had this assessment, we've looked at ourselves, we're good in this area, and we need improvement in that area, and then we're going to forget all about it, and something unfortunate happens the next time. It should be always with us, if you like.
So a live exercise. Okay, brilliant. With the forbearance of the committee, Councillor Nicholson has submitted some suggested wording for the minutes of the last meeting on the 11th of March. So I think if we move to take this now, if committee are okay with that. So the proposed revised wording of minute 94 is: the committee agreed at number 1 to note the current draft revised civic protocol handbook. Officers would discuss the points highlighted by the committee with the chair of the Lord Mayor's Selection and Advisory Committee and provide an updated report at a future meeting of the committee. Are we happy for that to be in the minutes, to be the amendment? Excellent. And thank you for that, Patrick. It's appreciated. We now move to item 9, which is the tracking decisions. This is to note. Any questions or comments on the tracking decisions? Councillor Rainsford and then Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm still a little bit concerned about the delay in getting any progress on the issues around whistleblowing. So we're looking at minutes 60, 61. Just wondered why that was proving to be so difficult.
So the request of officers report has been moved to the first meeting for 25-26.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Nicholson?
It was only a general point. It would be good an aspiration as we get to the end of the municipal year to close down as much as we possibly can.
Yes.
It's rather a long list, isn't it? And I think it just aspirationally we should be seeking to minimise it as quickly as possible.
Councillor Cuddihy?
At the risk of being contrary to what Patrick's just said, just in respect to one point, that's minute 82, page 45 of the...
82, did you say?
Yeah, minute 82 of the tracking decision. So I'm looking at page 45 of the bundle. That's the one on adult social care debt management. I think I'm rather late to raise it since this came up at the, I think it was a January meeting, and obviously we've met since, but it has occurred to me that at that January meeting, David Northey said, look, there was an awful lot of money outstanding, an awful lot of debt to the council through adult social care. He suggested at that meeting, as I recall, inviting an officer or officers along to report to the committee about what the level of debt was, and in particular, some of the issues they've been having getting a handle on it. We had a bar chart that explained an awful lot of the debt, but it didn't really provide us with the detail. You know, for instance, I think something came up about somebody owing significant debt might have some kind of agreement with the council in respect of disposal of property on their passing, that kind of thing. But I just noted that a further report due in February 2026, when I think that level of debt was really, really significant, is too long. And so I was going to ask, subject to any other views on the committee, and of course yours, Chair, whether we might have that report much sooner than February 2026.
that is something that we can go away and speak with David about, yeah.
Councillor Nicholson?
Thank you, Chair. Just on Councillor Kelly's point, we did have a report back from David, so he deferred it for one meeting and it was a revised report. So we did have it back, and then the decision I thought at the time was that we'd have a further update in the next municipal year. The way personally, I think the tracking decisions ought to work, that if we're going to have a report in the future, then surely that would become part of the work programme and you could close down the tracking decision. So you just see it then transfer from one document to the other, and we can track it in the work programme, rather than these tracking decisions be kept going for 2 or 3 municipal years. But, you know, perhaps the committee could just pull out the report that did come to one of the, I think it was the last meeting. Not sure, Councillor Cuddy, you were here, but certainly there was an updated report. But it was the resolution from that meeting that, because it's about £8 million, and certainly the council's worked, you know, very hard in the last few months to get a grip of the situation and then obviously try and recover the debt, that we wanted an updated report in due course.
The report can, Hannah's just messaged me, the report can be resent around if that works for you.
Any more questions or comments on the tracking decisions? Okay, so we'll move on to the work programme. This is just to... Oh, Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you very much, Chair. Well, at full council, I moved a motion or amendment in relation to the election of the Lord Mayor. I would like to add to the work programme for the next municipal year a review of the process that we select an individual to be the Lord Mayor of the City of Plymouth. Given the fact that historically it's been alternating between Labour and Conservative councillors, but we have a different council now. And who's to say with local government organisation we don't have a further change to the composition of the council? So I'd like to have asked that it be added to the work programme, please.
We can do that. Any further questions or comments on that, or on the rest of the work programme? Councillor Stevens.
Yeah, Patrick's just sort of prompted a thought with his comments about the Lord Mayor, and my comments aren't about the workings of the Lord Mayor or the Lord Mayor's function specifically, but we did have our, it was probably on its 28th name, but the Constitutional Working Group to look at these sort of things, and the late Eddie Rennie, of course, played a big role on that. So presumably that sort of thing would be a good, the issue that Patrick raised, if people are content to discuss it, which I don't see that anyone is, given your comments, Chair. Presumably that's the sort of thing that can be referred to revised and reconstituted body of that nature.
Councillor Nicholson.
Well, I think it's important that actually, if this committee needs to consider it, that the membership of this committee should take part in it potentially. So you could have a task and finish of this committee. I think it wouldn't be sensible to refer this off like to the Lord Mayor Selection Committee with a totally different body of individuals. So if we can effectively use this forum in the new municipal year, whoever's on it, to have a task and finish, or whatever you want to call it, rather than it just a report be brought, that would probably be the best way forward. And I think it would be very useful in the terms of reference that the representatives that sit on the panel could effectively have some discussion within their groups in terms of what their groups might think about the arrangements moving forward.
Ross, did you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think Councillor Stevens mentioned the Constitutional Review Group, and yes, we have called it very many things over the years, haven't we? So absolutely, I don't see any reason why that can't be stood up again. It's essentially what you've described, Councillor Nicholson, the task and finish, very short piece of work on that. Of course, there is going to be significant, or we're going to need to consider probably fairly significant constitutional changes over the next 12 months anyway. So it's probably a good idea. For that group to be stood up. Of course, it is always useful to remember the Lord Mayor Selection Committee is a committee of the council as governed by the 1972 Act. So a review of the terms of reference within that context and the membership of and so on seems perfectly reasonable and to be delivered by CRG, and then reported here for its review in a public forum. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Nicholson.
Just say for note, it's very interesting. We used to have that standalone panel, and it was the majority group on the council decided to amalgamate it with this, effectively the audit committee, to have what we have today. So we don't want to reinvent the wheel, because ultimately the constitution reflects the current arrangements. So I don't see why we can have just an ad hoc meeting to consider it, rather than necessarily have something that's then going to grow legs and back to a committee structure. So I think if we can look at that in the round for the annual meeting of the council for how it's going to function as a result of this committee, that would be useful.
Thank you. Does anyone have anything further on the work programme? No? Okay, in which case I will call today's Audit and Governance meeting to a close. Thank you all for attending and your questions and contributions, and see you in the next municipal year.
Can we thank you for your stewardship in that case, Chair, over the last few months? It's not the easiest of agendas to get through, so hopefully on behalf of everybody, thank you.